Good morning, year 11. Okay, it's Mr. Milliken here. I'm going to pick up the topic on respiration and breathing and finish it. There's not an awful lot left. You'll see in your booklet, page 12, is it? I think we're picking this up from. Okay, you got to the bottom of 11 last day, and so this is where we are going with it here. Okay, we will pick up these types of respirations. Okay, we'll highlight a few things, and we've got the little PowerPoint alongside that will hopefully give you a little bit of information on it. Okay, so respiration, it's a word that I'm sure you've heard many times, and hopefully this topic is able to teach you the distinction between respiration and breathing, because they are not the same thing. Okay, and it's important that by year 11 that you have the distinction clear in your head. Okay, breathing is a physical process where lungs are used to exchange gases. Okay, you breathe in and you absorb the oxygen, you breathe out and you get rid of carbon dioxide. So that's the breathing part. Respiration, though, is the chemical um, kind of process that's going on inside cells. Okay, and it's not at the lungs. Okay, the lungs are made of cells, so of course there'll be some respiration happening there, but every cell in your body is respiring. Okay, it needs to. It's an essential process. Even a few seconds without respiration can lead to death of a cell. And so this is a chemical reaction in every living cell where it uses the food that is supplied, okay, primarily through your diet. Okay, so any food we eat is going to be broken down, and the simplest of the food sources is glucose, and that is burnt inside your cells with the essential gas that you need to burn anything, okay, which is oxygen, and you're going to release then some energy as well as some waste. Okay, and we'll look at that. So it's a type of combustion without a flame. That's really what respiration is. All right. So things to highlight are this: that it is a chemical breakdown, okay, in all living things, and it's the food to supply energy. And the food that we want you to make sure you're crystal clear on is glucose. Okay. Now there are two ways in which respiration can happen. Okay, and as you'll see, there is the type with oxygen. Okay, it's used and that gets complete burning, and that is the aerobic version. And that's what you're doing right now. It's what I'm doing right now. We're sitting probably quite sedately, not a lot of demand on the body, and you're breathing in and out, and it is supplying oxygen to all your cells around your body. Okay, and you can meet that demand, so therefore your breathing is pretty slow and consistent. Okay, the other type though that is required is anaerobic respiration, and that does not use oxygen. All right, and that occurs whenever basically the oxygen supply will not meet the demand for energy. Okay, you cannot literally breathe quick enough. You can't get enough oxygen in fast enough for the energy that's required for that particular time. And we'll be looking into this a little bit more, but an example that you would know and appreciate through anaerobic respiration is sprinting. Okay, when you go for a sprint, a hard, uh, full of energy run that you're kind of going at full tilt, you will find that your breathing may even stop. Sometimes you hold your breath for a bit, and it's because you cannot breathe quick enough to meet the demand of those quick, powerful leg muscles driving you for the 50 yards or 100 meters or whatever it is that you're trying, and so your breathing doesn't try and keep up, and therefore your body will revert to anaerobic respiration for that time. Now, it allows you to get away, allows you to win a race, allows you to escape danger, but it is not sustainable. Okay, you try going full tilt, and you'll find after about 150 meters that there's a burn in your muscles, and there's waste building up there that simply will prevent you from keep going from that, and therefore it is a short-term solution. Okay, it provides a quick burst of energy, uh, primarily to either get away or to escape, and I'd say it's not sustainable. Other animals will use it to produce slightly different things, as we'll see. Okay, but that's the big distinction. Aerobic is using oxygen, anaerobic is without. So you can highlight that in your notes. Then we're into the equations. Now you'll recognize this. This was done probably in year 9, I think, that the aerobic respiration involves oxygen. and it's the complete breakdown. That's why it's so much of an advantage, because all the glucose gets dismantled and changed into a form of a chemical that we can use for energy expenditure in our cells. Okay, that's called ATP, which is not something you really need to know at GCSE, but it's a currency that your cells recognize. Okay, that's able to be cashed in for energy usage, and what you get then is carbon dioxide, which is what we breathe out, and water. Okay, and we use some of that water or we get rid of it too. Okay, we would breathe out some water and the moist exhaled air, and we obviously pee out as well. So if we have excess water, we can get shot of it easy enough. So the word equation is what you need, and the balance symbol equation. Okay, and you'll recognize some of the things in this. If we put this up, I'll make this a little bit bigger, and there you go. Okay, you've got your glucose plus oxygen, okay, being fully burnt, completely burnt to make carbon dioxide, water, and this energy then is released, right? So you could scribble that in. This balance symbol equation you might recognize. Okay, it's very similar, of course, to the one you did last year or earlier this year with photosynthesis. It's just things are in slightly different places, really. So you start with the glucose C6H12O6 plus the oxygen 6O2 gives you C6O2 and 6 waters. Okay, and again with the energy. So you could pause this here and write those two things in and then highlight them, please. Make sure they stand out. But your photosynthesis equation is really just almost the reverse of this. You start with your 6 carbon dioxides and your 6 waters. You add a bit of energy from the sunlight along with the special ingredient chlorophyll, and you would make, well, the plant makes glucose, C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen. So they're almost mirror image of each other, okay? Glucose is being made through photosynthesis, and glucose is being burnt or used or broken down in respiration, aerobic particularly, okay? I'll just reduce this. So say pause that there if you need to go on. You're into anaerobic respiration, okay, which is this form without oxygen. Now, anaerobic, okay, we're going to learn about it in two different places. Firstly, in your muscles, so what happens in your cells, and then in yeast. Now, an in biology, an A prefix means without. So we think about things like sexual reproduction, asexual, so without the need of male and female. This is an stands for without oxygen there, if that helps you remember it. So strenuous exercise, okay, running as fast as you can, going full out, okay, these HIIT regimes, high intensity training, stuff where you are going as hard and as fast as you can, short bursts on the rugby or hockey pitch or football pitch, those tend to be anaerobic. Okay, it's one reason why your muscles then start to ache after a wee while. And in between, if you're getting a wee breather, you'll find that your breath is obviously quite quick, your breathing is quite deep, quite heavy. And that's because you're trying to pay back a little bit of the oxygen debt that you owe your muscles, okay, in order to break down some of the waste that's there. So what you've got is you cannot breathe in enough oxygen for aerobic to supply. Oxygen becomes a limiting factor. Now that's a little bit of terminology good to know, right? So you cannot meet the demand. Therefore, the muscle cells use anaerobic, and it produces some energy, okay, and allows you to escape, whether it's an opponent on the rugby pitch or whatever, or a lion if you're out in the savannah, but allows you to get away, a quick burst of energy, and then you have to pay it back, so you can't sustain it. And so what happens is anaerobic releases less energy. That's important. You don't get the same energy expenditure as you would. It's not a complete combustion or burning of the oxygen. So aerobic is far preferred, and it produces this toxic waste, which you'll know about if you've ever had kind of cramp or stitch in your muscles, okay, where it's built up, and it's just a kind of a heavy burning that exists there. And so the equation for this, if we go back across, okay, is this here. So anaerobic during strenuous exercise, this buildup of something called lactic acid or lactate. Okay, it's the same thing. I don't mind which version you use. I probably by default might talk about lactic acid. But that's what's going to happen. So when you go for a 100-meter sprint, those muscles are burning any oxygen that's already there, and it's not entirely release burning it down, so you're not making water and carbon dioxide that you would normally make. You make lactate, which is it's like a type of alcohol derivative, and it's still got a lot of energy within it, and you've only released a little bit of the from the glucose, so therefore enough to get away, but you've almost lost a fair bit of the reserve in the lactate. Okay, and that builds up, and your muscles eventually will kind of quit on you if you don't stop and you don't get oxygen in, which then is used to break down the lactate. Okay, and make it harmless and allow your muscles to reset again. Okay, so it's sorry, there's an energy needs to go in there too. Let me split the full. So lactate plus energy, right? And a little note, if you haven't already said, it's the less energy than you would normally get through aerobic. Okay, so if you want to experience that, why don't you take a break and go out for a quick sprint and have a little feel of the muscles aching a little bit and you breathing heavy and panting away. Okay, so that equation goes in there. We've then got anaerobic in yeast. All right, I'll just change the color here. So yeast are a type of fungus. Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with them in things like baking bread, and they're used in a lot of food industries. Okay, for beer making and such like. And what they do is they don't make lactic acid like animal cells do. Okay, say they would normally. As every animal does, aerobically produce carbon dioxide and water. But if there's an absence or low concentration in oxygen, then they go into anaerobic respiration and they produce carbon dioxide and alcohol. And that's where we have benefited from that. Okay, so the lactic is not there. They do create a little bit of CO2, and that's going to be beneficial for bread makers. And then the alcohol is what really the beer making industry is after there. Okay, so it's going to be the same glucose, no oxygen on the left side, so just be glucose, arrow, carbon dioxide, and alcohol. Okay, you can use this to fill it in. So that's the equation there that you can put in. And just a little overview of this. What they obviously discovered many years ago was that if you put yeast with flour and a bit of water and different things to make dough, then put that in the oven, what you find is the yeast will start to anaerobically break down the glucose, the sugars within the dough, and makes two things, carbon dioxide and alcohol. The carbon dioxide then makes the dough rise, and that's where the bread then starts to rise and gives you a nice kind of airy feel to it. The alcohol is there, but because of the heat of the oven, it evaporates off. Okay, so you don't ever detect it really after the bread is cooked. If you're beer making, then the carbon dioxide is the kind of waste that you're not that interested in, so it kind of disappears off, and the alcohol starts to build up. And if you use different types of kind of sugar source, whether it's barley or wheat or whatever it is, the different plant material, then you get different flavors to the alcohols. Okay, and that's where you get the whole range of different alcoholic drinks that later in life you might get to enjoy a little bit. Okay, so anaerobic, say this is a benefit that we have learnt to use with yeast in our food industry in particular. Okay, after a wee while, the alcohol, which is really the waste, builds up to a level where it actually kills off the yeast. So if it's not tapped away off, then it kind of the yeast stop functioning. So that's one way they get to a certain level of activity, and then it grinds to a halt. Okay, because of the alcohol contaminating the environment that the yeast is in. Right, so you got that equation down at the bottom of page 12. Aerobic respiration provides more energy than anaerobic and necessary for the yeast to grow and reproduce. So ordinarily yeast are looking for aerobic conditions but will produce alcohol and carbon dioxide when it's anaerobic. Okay, you might read ethanol at times rather than alcohol, same thing. Okay, right, on to this last wee bit, which is a card sort. Okay, so you just need to put the right things. Now, ordinarily in class we would have given you something here. We haven't got that, so what we'll do is we'll just confine this a little bit, and I'll put heart then. So you need from this sheet on the right hand side here, find the definition of heart. So we have a reactant for respiration we get from the food. It carries reactant products of respiration to and from our cells. These bring air containing oxygen into the body. A waste product of respiration, the gaseous reactant of respiration, pumps blood around the body. A waste product, or the site of respiration in the cell. It's written twice for some reason. Okay, now the one the heart, I think you would agree with, is going to be this one here. Okay, so I'll just do a little heart, so you can write that beside it. Okay, pause it if you need to. Blood, then I think we'd gone further up. It was this carries the reactants and products, so things that are needed and the waste that's then produced to and from the cells. So that would be the blood matched up. Okay, you can write that in there. Okay, pause this just to get you a moment. Lungs, then these bring air containing oxygen into the body and get rid of it. So remember, that's the gas exchange. Okay, so that's lungs. Mitochondria, you remember back doing cells, okay, they're considered the kind of powerhouses. That's where aerobic respiration happens. So I think there was something on down here. Site of respiration in the cell. Mitochondria. Okay. Strictly speaking, the site of aerobic respiration, because if oxygen is present, then the mitochondria are used. If oxygen is absent, then the mitochondria don't get involved, and the anaerobic process takes place in the cytoplasm rather than the mitochondria. But for your level, that would be a suffice. Carbon dioxide, then, hopefully from your equation, you'll remember carbon dioxide is a waste. Rather than put it in here, waste product, I think there was. Let me just see if there's a waste product. Okay, there's no distinction between those. If it was a gaseous waste, it would go in there, but that's carbon dioxide. Okay, oxygen, that is needed. It's what you are currently after. The gaseous reactant. Reactant means what you need at the start, the things that are going to react. So that's the oxygen. It's the gaseous reactant. And then water is a waste product. Okay, so that can go in there. And then the last one is glucose, and there must be one left up here. Yeah, a reactant for respiration. We get it from our food. So when we break our food down, all the carbohydrates can go down into glucose. Okay, so you can pause those and get them in the right thing and just scribble so you have your kind of parts and your definitions and where they interact and where they play their part. Okay, so I'll let that be. Right, on down here, this is a little practical that we would maybe have done in class to let you see. What I'll do is maybe put up a wee video clip, okay, just to see what you get from that, and we'll try to a YouTube clip up, and then there's this comparisons of types of respiration. Okay, we'll go through this together, and we just tick really. We're saying uses oxygen. Well, hopefully you're okay with that. We have, yep, aerobic uses. Anaerobic, by definition, is no oxygen, nor with the yeast. Okay. Releases energy. Well, the truth is they all release energy. Okay, but this one is more. Okay, and that's the little distinction maybe worth highlighting. We'll take the thickness down and we'll put a little. Okay, this is more, and this is less. Okay, my handwriting to say between my handwriting and this pen, it doesn't really give you much of a chance, but you'll be able to fill this in. My rubber's not working now, so there we go. And we'll try and get this done. So more, less. Okay, produces ethanol. Let's go back to that. Ethanol. Well, ethanol is only a byproduct of the yeast. Okay, it's what we use to make it, so that's a yes. In muscles, it's not ethanol and certainly not aerobically. Otherwise, you'd be getting drunk in your cells as you basically respire. Produces CO2, yes, it's always in the aerobic equation. When muscles, it's not. We do not produce carbon dioxide. Remember, it's just lactate. Whereas in yeast, they do. Anaerobically, they produce carbon dioxide, and that helps hopefully with the bread making. Give you a reminder of that. And then lactate or lactic acid, the answer is no. Okay, nothing there. It is in muscles and it's not in yeast. Okay, so those are your X's and your ticks and all of that. And that pretty much finishes the book. Okay, so what I'll do is I will leave this wee video here, okay, and I say I'll put up a little clip of a similar experiment to this one here on that page, just so you can see. When you're back in school, no doubt we'll go back over a lot of this and you might get to see that in the flesh, okay, and maybe even do possibly a little practical. Then I'm going to put up a little quiz now, just a little 10 kind of question quiz on this topic, and that's really you for this week, okay? And we'll look forward to seeing you back in school on the 12th of April. Okay, right, see you soon, bye.